Good morning. It is Saturday, 7th of June, and I'm Peter Halley, Chair of ACNVT. This is our duly noticed, more or less regular uh, Saturday meeting. And let's do a quorum count. First, I'll remind everybody this is a virtual meeting. Everything's being recorded, so if there's anything in the background on your computer or anything else, please feel free to move it or avoid having it made part of the public record. Uh, We'll conduct this meeting in the normal course, in which I'll recognize people and give them an opportunity to speak. There will be public comment. Committee members go first, and the public can follow on if they have something to say. First of all, let's establish that we have a quorum. I'll just go over the people that we have here. Peter Halley, I'm here. Michael Cody, I see you're here. Kathy, I see you're here. Gary, I see you're here. Steve Beller is here. Donald Green's here. Scott Ullman's here. Bill Gardner is here. Donna Martino's here. Peter Kahn is here. And Jean Briskman is here, as well as Patty Duster. And so I think we have a quorum there. Thank you all. Do I have a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor, raise your hand. Anybody opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting?
I read them, so moved.
Okay.
Second.
Good. All those in favor?
Aye.
And anybody opposed? No, okay, they're approved. Let's see. So today we had hoped to have a speaker, but unfortunately he has been under the weather, as indicated, and he is the director of our sewer and stormwater department. And I know stormwater is becoming a bigger and bigger issue on the island, and there are some sewer issues as well. He has been a bit under the weather in the last week or so, and he has indicated his willingness to come and speak with us at a future meeting about the items of interest to us and to the island in general. So we will proceed with the agenda, which has just us as our speakers today, and go down the agenda list. Discussion of town elections outcome. I think the top items of interest to us were our island home, short-term rental, and I think also some coastal resiliency issues. And I think as the town meeting went, our island home had a majority of people that wanted to execute the plan, but it did not get the required 2/3 approval either at the town meeting or later on the ballot issue. And so I think that is going back to the drawing boards. I think the question for us is, do we have something to add? And what the future of that project or a new project will look like, and we won't know until it is defined. On short-term rental articles, I think everything was voted down. There's been a recent development yesterday. One of the lawsuits was decided more or less in favor of the plaintiff, and that would restrict, subject to further activity by the zoning board and the zoning board of appeals, short-term rentals in the historic district of the island. And I think that some would say that the ruling in um, that lawsuit would seem to extend to the entire. It doesn't control, but the reasoning, and this is basically just an order without an opinion. The reasoning would seem to extend beyond if there were another lawsuit. Um, so that's, I think, something that we want to discuss. It's been on our radar screen for quite a while, the short-term rental issue. And then there was a sort of call for what is the sense of the town meeting on abolishing the town meeting in favor of a town council structure of government. And the indication was that there's not a majority of people going to the town meeting, or a majority of people, I believe, who well, I guess this did not go to a vote, further vote, but there's work to be done on the town council issue, which remains alive. Um, and I think those are the big things that caught my attention from the town meeting. And maybe we just want to go over them more carefully, or does anybody have other issues from the town meeting that you think we need to discuss at this meeting?
Peter, I'd like us to go over all of these individually.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gary.
Okay, so let's first talk about the meeting, the results of the Our Island Home. Clearly, they didn't get the 2/3 majority. And clearly, once again, we're talking about a minuscule population of the voters, but there was pretty wide recognition during the course of the pre-debate that $125 million was an enormous amount to spend for a facility with such limited activity relating to residents on the island. And so there was a lot of concern about that. And from what I can see, even though Dawn Holgate continues to push it as a member of the Old Island Home Committee and also part of the Select Board, they realized they should go back to the drawing board. There were some comments about the fact that, as our own Gene Briskman has pointed out, Martha's Vineyard is putting up a similar type of nursing home at about half the cost for a greater number of units. And so the folks in our community are still pushing for something. And there's a lot of, from what I can see, and I read a lot about this, and I listen to whenever I can these town meetings, there's a lot of people concerned. There still is some concern about moving them off the creeks where they are. And there's still a lot of concern about the enormous cost of that. And at this point, the amount that might be needed to build that, if we went with the old plan, might not be bound by the existing fixed, so-called fixed amount contracts, because by the time it goes back to them, or by the time we have another town meeting or approval, who knows what the pricing might be in view of all of this tariff stuff. So there's a lot up in the air about that. And I think the Select Board is going to talk about it this Wednesday. I think that was part of their plan, to see about what they ought to be doing for the future. But it didn't sound to me like, and certainly when I hear Brooke Moore talking, she says she doesn't think that it's appropriate to even consider a special town meeting in the fall for our island home. So that's my comment about what I've been hearing and reading about the Our Island Home. I'd be interested in what my fellow committee members think about that.
Peter Kahn.
Well, I guess I'm not sure I totally agree with you, Gary. I got a sense from the meeting that obviously there's a great interest and desire but a wish, so to speak, for our island home. But obviously, the cost is the factor. So I'm not sure it's in any way dead. I think there is a lot of interest to try to figure out a way to go about this to achieve a result, still to get something. What I'm intrigued by, and I think we ought to at least quietly pursue. There was a fellow, maybe one of us knows him, I don't, who seemed to be pretty knowledgeable. Said he was in the business, who spoke and thought that there was an ability to get private money into this. And obviously, to do that, they would have to sell the land, not or at least have some sort of long-term, something attractive to a private investor. But the numbers he was saying, the numbers just are crazy, and that it could be done for less. And you need somebody if you're going to argue this, you need somebody who has some knowledge. I mean, just to say it's too expensive is not going to carry the day with the community unless you've got some real expertise. So to the extent that that we're interested, I'd like to see us pursue at least talking to this fellow. Also, by the way, I did see a letter yesterday. I hope I'm still on here, but
You're on.
to Dawn Holgate from a board, somebody on one of the Nantucket boards, asking her about the sort of quote unquote admissions policy to the our island home. In other words, who obviously there are a limited number of beds. Who's going to get those beds? What priority? How are they going to figure this out? The one thing that was interesting was that she turned it over to the administrator, and the administrator wrote back, and I can circulate this if you like, that under Medicaid rules, this has to be open to everyone. So it will include all non-residents. We should have as high a priority, under the rules, as high a priority as anybody. So that creates I thought that was kind of interesting. I guess I had sort of assumed that the residents would have some sort of priority here, but they don't apparently. So I just throw that out.
Peter,
Yeah.
I asked that question a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
I asked that very question,
yeah,
and it was made very clear to me that anyone is eligible to be able to use our island home. But the issue for the non-residents or the non-local people is, for the same reason that the local people complain that having something off island for their relatives would be a hardship, so would it be a hardship for people who don't live on island.
yeah. That's their choice. Obviously, by choice. I hear you.
But
Yeah,
so I was interested in seeing that when I got the answer a few years ago. They said, yeah, everybody could use it. You could be from California or from Washington, or it didn't matter. But now I'm saying, yeah, but who's going to send the relatives there? They'll never get there.
But as a matter of sort of a fact point, because I think this is a relevant issue, a relevant data point. I have a neighbor, a summer neighbor on the island, and they have in the past, their elderly mother has stayed at our island home during their summer residency. So it is a facility that space available has been certainly available to off-islanders who actually find it convenient during some portion of the year. So I think we can't be dismissive of the fact that it's a public facility open to all, and that's a relevant data point. Patty, you're up next, and then Michael.
Good morning. I think the question on the table is, do we as a committee voice our opinion or thoughts on this? And I think Don Holgate has asked people to come up with suggestions and whatever. So I think it is a great opportunity to have the voice of our committee heard. More people that hear the name of our committee might be more curious about joining up and becoming more of a force in this committee. I'm sure this has been discussed, but it seems to me that the our island home is sitting on a gold mine in terms of its location, and that property is extraordinarily valuable. And if they sold that property at top dollar, that would offset a huge cost and put this in conjunction with a hospital where it's a mid-island, it's established, there's good care right next door. And if there's some disaster, you can, fudge with beds and help and so on. So I think it's worth throwing out any and all ideas, and if we want to put it under the auspices of this committee or whatever, but they're asking for help. So I think we put our name out there in some way, shape, or form. That's it.
Michael?
Yeah, just two questions. I agree with the comment that if somebody has some alternative financing and some alternative ideas, we ought to reach out and see if we can speak to him. But my other question is more for Gary. I'm a little surprised that the Vineyard is doing a larger nursing home at half the costs, because I would suspect some of their challenges are similar to ours. Do we know why that is so cheap relative to Nantucket?
Gene's the expert on that. Gene, why don't you tell him?
Well, I don't know why it's a lot less
It's
expensive.
federal money.
Their funding is coming partly from a loan that they're taking out with the United States Department of Agriculture, which has funds available for rural communities, which Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket are considered rural communities. And they're borrowing $30 million for that. It's also a different concept that it's 70 beds, but in 5 separate buildings. Each building has 14 rooms and its own kitchen and lounge area, so that each of the buildings will sort of be self-contained. There'll be some common areas as well. Of the 5 buildings, right now, the plan is for 4 of them to be used for long-term care and for 1 to be for rehab and short-term care. The I can try to find out more. It turns out that the organization that I'm a trustee of back in Boston was going to manage that the Martha's Vineyard facility. And they were on board to do that. And then there was a change. The CEO retired of Hebrew Senior Life, and a new CEO came in and decided, I think, that it was beyond what Hebrew Senior Life was busy enough with lots of other things in the Boston area, and so we we're no longer managing the facility, but the fellow who was the CEO and is now retired is on the board of the nonprofit that it has built and will own the facility, and I can get him more involved. I'm sure he'd be happy to come to one of our meetings and talk about it. And he would have a lot more detail, and I can even find out from him where they fundraise. But I know that as part of opening these new buildings, they are doing a lot of naming, offering a lot of naming opportunities for, there's a garden in the center, and that's already been named. And each of the buildings will have a name, and probably each of the bedrooms will have a name. And you can raise a lot of money at $500,000 or $100,000 a crack at those sorts of things. And I suspect that's part of the way they've raised the money, but we could certainly get more detail. Why it's half the price on a per bed basis? Because it was done privately, they watch their pennies a lot more. I believe that the town has no interest in saving money. They speak to it and they give voice to it, but I'm not sure that they really pay much attention to it when the push comes to shove. The other thing is, maybe this data exists, but what would it take and what would it cost to update the current Our Island home and have it meet the state requirements and maybe get another 5 or 10 years out of it. I don't know if that analysis has ever been done, but I think that may be something that would be worth doing and may have interesting results. And it may have been done, but I don't know that.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that Nantucket residents are very generous from a charitable point of view. And if financing and funding the vineyard was done with charitable contributions, that may be an option for the nursing home on Nantucket. I mean, look how generous they are to the cottage hospital. Um, I mean, I think we might be useful to the select board and to the town management, just providing some options for them to think about.
Yeah, it seems to me the approach, well, first of all, I think there's general agreement that this is an item of interest to non-voting taxpayers, and this committee ought to stay, at least informed, and then the question is what the level of involvement is that we should seek. Just listening to all these comments, I mean, I think the starting point is really why is the old proposal, and I don't mean to be looking backwards, but what made the old proposal so expensive, and how would you cut the cost down to something that appears to be more comfortably financeable and operationally, in terms of the ongoing expenses, affordable, so that the island has a needed service for the local residents. And part of that, by the way, appears this is a skilled nursing facility. It's not just an old people's home. And skilled nursing includes this rehabilitation concept that there's a place that after you've had the kind of surgery or whatever that requires rehabilitation and assistance, that you go to a skilled nursing facility for a period of time, and that's the next step in terms of getting home. And that is also the role of our Island Home, as I understand it, and it ought to be the role in the future. And it's a role that can be played for people who live here and people who visit as well. But that the point there is just that this is it's a facility that is needed, and then the only question is it affordable on Nantucket? And perhaps we can be helpful in terms of a different set of eyes, looking at it from a different point of view, to find a proposed solution that gets a facility in the right place, whether it is repairing the existing facility and bring it up to snuff, or putting it someplace on the island. Somebody's already looked at this. They came up with a proposal. It hasn't convinced the voters that it's a proposal that ought to be taken. And so I think that, should we be reinventing the wheel, or should we be basically making sensible proposals that might help somebody else reinvent or invent a new wheel for this facility, which is, I think, going to maintain, there's going to be a push to do something. And can we help do something that seems to be better than what has been proposed in the past?
Peter Kahn has his hand up. I have a comment in response to Michael's question to me, but I'll let Peter Kahn. I saw his hand.
I'd like to, yeah, I mean, look, I think we should have a quote unquote subcommittee. I mean, for those of us who arguably are interested in pursuing this a little bit further, there's a lot, I mean, there are a lot of questions. There were not a lot of answers. I mean, including, for example, one of the reasons the Martha's Vineyard came in much less is it's modular construction, which it's probably pretty smart. But there's also, as Gene said, there's federal money. There was a sort of a one-time opportunity, I think, that they were able to take advantage of. The other thing that they kept saying throughout the discussion was that, you got to add 33% for building on Nantucket and getting stuff over. I don't know. Who knows if that's the case. But I think that, there are a lot of questions. I think we ought to just get some people together and start asking those, and move it forward and see what we can find out.
Yep. So,
My other comment in response to Michael's question is that, Michael, you mentioned that, you talked about the old, the getting money from residents, and talked about the hospital, getting enough money to build a new, to spend $125 million to build a new hospital. During one of the finance committee meetings, I think it was either finance committee or the capital committee, they asked one of the people who was voting for it whether or not he thought that they should use that approach as well. And what he said is, for the hospital, it's one thing. For the non-residents, who basically, we, the non-residents, are the one who paid for the redo of Nantucket Cottage Hospital, not the locals. And what he said is, they doubted very much that these same people would give money for the old island home, because none of the people who are non-residents actually consider it something that is important to them for the future. And so he didn't think that getting that money. And by the way, at the same time, you might know or you might not be aware of, I went to a fundraiser, I think I mentioned before, I went to a fundraiser in Palm Beach this winter, and the Nantucket Cottage Hospital has decided to do a second fundraiser because there's a little bit of property behind them, and what they decided to do is to build housing for 24 of their employees. And so they started this fundraiser. Guess how much they're asking? They're asking the ask is $100 million for 24 units. And by the way, they've already gotten 30 million from what I hear from the people from the Cottage Hospital, not from me, but from some of them. But
well, I think
the point is that people who make these contributions, which are mostly us non-voting taxpayers, right? They're more interested in the hospital and the services they get from them, as opposed to the Our Island home, which they're never planning to use for themselves or their relatives.
yeah. So we have Donna next up, and then Scott. Donna, you unmute yourself.
Listening to everyone, all these are very good ideas, but I have a question. I mean, who's behind all this? Everything is very scattered. The town doesn't seem to have a clear plan, a clear approach. So I'm wondering, do we offer to put together some sort of a formal discovery process? Or do we ask the town to do that and we offer our assistance? I mean, we have such great ideas. Why isn't the town doing it? Why isn't the town or whoever's behind this project inviting the gentleman from the vineyard and other people who have constructed and rebuilt or refurbished homes? Do we have all this information, or is it still out there in a cloud somewhere?
Well, I think an answer to that, Donna, is that the town has a plan, and the plan was rejected, or it wasn't approved by a sufficient majority of the people. And there are people that have been planning this for quite a long time. It's not this is not the dark state part of the town. I think we were part of the scoping process, 2 years ago or something. We had town hired somebody to, basically interview everybody, and they came to at least one of our meetings and made a presentation here. So this is a matter of what they came up with after a lot of hard work turned out not to be sufficiently acceptable, and so they have the feedback, find something that's less expensive. We also have, before I get to Scott,
I'm not,
this overhanging cloud of what the heck is happening with the federal budget. Because, 20 to 30% of the operating expenses of our island home, I believe, are paid by Medicaid. And that's a whole, you have two issues. One, you have to build it, and two, you have to operate it. And we already know that there's a sort of permanent override to pay for some portion of those operations. But anyway, that's, I think, in other words, I think there is a structure out there, and the issue is, giving, I think, our opinions to that structure.
and request more transparency, please.
Okay, well, I think they're public meetings, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, Scott?
I start with the glass half empty because if I recall correctly, they got a majority in the town meeting. So, and there's a long history in Nantucket. Nantucket practice seems to be to reject things a couple of times and then pass them.
A majority is less than 5%, Scott, less than 5% of the population. That's a
But
majority. That's not a majority.
But well, those are the people who showed up at the town meeting.
Yeah,
But
that's
so
not a
anyway,
majority.
it is not outside of outside of probability that this could show up again and pass, particularly given, the financing structure, shall we say. The second thing that, following Donna's thought, this is a major decision, so you'd think there should be some, sort of proper governance around it. Rather than the town sort of coming up with something, normally what it seems the town does is form committees to consider major issues. And, rather than, we can sort of lob in, our thoughts to whoever in the town is doing this. But it would seem to me that, a more proper structure would be to form a relatively broad-based committee. We probably wouldn't be out of place having a seat there. And, try to consider all of these other questions that are sort of coming up, it seems a bit ad hoc. And I agree that the town sort of seems to have one way of doing these things, which, I think we've just seen maybe is not the best. So, maybe that's a concrete way to go. Say, look, this thing failed. There is a perceived need for it. Maybe we need to properly study this issue, the alternatives, the funding issues, you see how the government issues resolve on it, but get some traditional style governance around this question that is a $140 million question.
So the $141 million question is, who would want to serve on a committee of this committee to look a bit more deeply into our island home situation?
I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I'd be happy to.
Okay, and so
Me
Don,
too, I would.
Donna, so I've got three names right now, right? Don, Jean, and Donna. Anybody else? Okay, good.
Peter, may I just suggest something? Before we form a committee, would it be appropriate to reach out to the town and express our interest in doing so? So that we have their, not permission, but permission to go ahead and do it. Their official approval of our going ahead and doing it.
I actually think the town should form the committee.
Yeah, I agree.
I would think that's a dangerous precedent to set. I don't want to be in a position where we're asking the town, for permission to do anything, to tell you the truth. We may tell them, if we choose to tell them, we're going to go for, we're going to try to help you by doing this. But if we're an advisory committee, I don't think we have, we advise on issues that are a concern to us. They can take the advice or not, but I would not want to be in a position where we're starting to ask them what we can do and what we can't do.
Yeah.
Well, not a question of asking, that's probably not the right, but just getting, letting them know we have interest in doing it unless they're going to do it. It should be the town doing this.
Okay, as I say, I think the town is doing it. But that's I think the first item that this subcommittee of the committee, because I agree with Peter, we already have permission. Our
Okay.
mission is in the bylaws, and it says that our statutory duty, so to speak, is to advise the select board on matters of concern to non-voting taxpayers. And this is a matter of concern. And so we don't need permission to advise, and typically the best advice is based upon factual information, and so gathering that information is part of what we are going to try to do. So I think the first thing that this committee, your committee, Donna, and I think you three
Scott and
figure out what
Michael, I think.
it's. I've got Don, Jean, and Donna as people who are interested in
Michael.
on this committee.
Yeah,
Michael or Scott, would you be
Michael,
interested?
yeah, no, I'd be happy to help.
I'm
Okay.
happy to help as well. I just have a very busy period with another nonprofit that I'm
Well,
involved
even whatever you could
But
do
happy to-
would
happy
be
to help.
wonderful.
Yeah, be
Yeah.
happy to help.
But I think the
Great,
first thing you
great.
might
We
do
have a
is
committee.
is figure out what the existing structure is. In other words, who's calling the shots for the town? And I believe that it's Dawn Holgate, who is the current leader, and she also happens to be the new chair of the select board, who is I'm running the show is probably the wrong term, but majorly responsible for whatever organization within the town, because the Our Island Home is an existing part of town government, and there's already a group that we probably ought to find out what it is, how it is, and how we can more directly interact with them, and then come back and figure out what the next steps are.
Peter, I think everyone has to wait until Wednesday when the select board has planned to take up this issue again
Yeah,
and to see whether they decide to start original thinking and start committees or not, or wait 6 months or what, or wait for Medicaid. I mean, that's what we have to do, wait and see what select board says at its upcoming meeting on Wednesday.
yeah. Gene?
Yeah, I mean, I think we ought to, before we start doing any work ourselves, is to verify that the select board or Libby or whomever the Our Island Home reports into are interested in having us help.
I
don't
agree.
think we operate independently as a separate committee, independently of what the town is or isn't doing. And if it's not doing anything, then I really don't want to waste our time hitting our heads against the wall, because it's going to go nowhere. We could come up with brilliant ideas, but if there's no inclination on the part of the town to support some activity, then I would consider it just sort of a waste of our time.
I agree.
So I think that fits neatly into what I suggested, which is the first objective of this subcommittee is to find out, basically outline the lay of the land on this project, and who is in charge right now, and how we might interact with them or not. Typically, when we have been appointed to committees like the short-term rental working group and the town council study committee, that appointment has come through the select board. But that doesn't stop us from, if we don't have an appointment, the value of the appointment is that we get directly involved, and we build, the person, Peter and Donna and the other people who've been involved in these things, Gary on the climate committee, so to speak. They build relationships and they build trust, and you become or can become trusted voices on these committees. Otherwise, we're sort of at the outside. We can still give our advice and opinions, but it's sort of a secondary involvement rather than a primary involvement. So
I still think we need some sort of alliance from, as you were saying, the select board or somebody, because we are non-voting taxpayers. And if we go and start a committee without any kind of support or acknowledgement from the town, the voting taxpayers are going to say, we want this. And you folks who are maybe or maybe not going to go there, you're running off and creating a committee. So I do think we need some kind of acknowledgement or go ahead and do it kind of thing. So we don't waste time, as Jean is saying, and that we have sanctions or merit or whatever you want to call it from the town or the select board.
Why don't we
Think-
wait until Gary, as Gary says, let's wait until Wednesday and we'll know a lot more and figure
Yeah.
out see what's.
Yes.
Don, you had a comment?
Yeah, it's just that we are connected to this project because the people who live here are workers and they have family who need that kind of facility. So in a way, we're all in a symbiotic relationship here. And even people come from off island to work here. If they know there's someplace they can send their loved one, it becomes more practical for them to do so. So I think that nursing homes allow people who live here to stay here.
Yeah, I quite agree with you that it's the same as schools. It's just that the bang for the buck is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that, but also I visited nursing homes in my medical career, just about all of it. And to know that if people go to rehab, that's a Medicare payment. And if they're there to stay long-term, that is Medicaid. And should also know that if they come from a home on the island, that's sort of a backstop for Massachusetts, because they will, once everybody is out of that home, they will figure out how much money was spent on the Medicaid patient and get it back. And I think that's in the laws of the state.
Yeah. Okay, so I think Lynn, you have and then we'll sort of close this down and move on to the next subject.
I just have a short comment from people who are voting taxpayers who appreciated Kathy Baird speaking at the town meeting and going through the financial side of Medicare and Medicaid that had not been addressed by the town itself. So I think you are already at the table from having representation at that meeting. And after Wednesday, you will have a better sense of where you would fit in going forward.
Good. So I think our next, should we move on to short-term rentals and where that stands? And then we'll get to Town Council Study Committee and climate and anything else. So perhaps Kathy, you want to bring us up to date on short-term rentals?
Okay, at town meeting, I wasn't, by the time I was in line, I did not get to speak on this particular issue, because the article was called. But it did get almost a 60% pass it, yes vote, if you will, and which is trending. If you look at the votes over time, it's trending towards every time it comes up for vote, it gets closer to the 2/3. So that's interesting. I was surprised, but not surprised at the judge's decision. And Peter or somebody who's a lawyer maybe can walk us through that really quickly on what do those things actually mean that he said in there, and do they apply to the whole island, that kind of thing. But when I sat in the courtroom, it was very clear from the body language and from the questions the judge was asking that he was really tired of this issue and really tired of the appeals going back and forth and wanted the town to fix this. And he said, you know, fix it at your next town meeting, or I will, and don't think that I can't, that I don't have the power to do that. So I wasn't surprised that he came down with a really strict decision, but I'm also surprised at the decision he made. And I'm trying to think of why he did that. So it's interesting, I think, from the point of view of, I don't think that the Act Now side got their way, really, because they weren't going after primary residence rentals. They were going after the accessory use. That's what was the whole thing that was put forward. So that was not approved. And what the judge did, the way I see it now, thinking about it a little, is said, you know what, I'm not going to go into this discriminating against this, you know, whether it's going to discriminate against people who live here year round who don't. I'm not going to go down that accessory use rat hole, but I'm going to say that the zoning doesn't say you can rent short term, and therefore you can't unless it's like a rooming house, because that is clearly in the zoning. So he wants the zoning to be fixed, and this is forcing the hand to do that, because the town can't survive with this ruling in place, especially if it applies to the whole island, and it really impacts locals very much, in not only on the tourist side of things, on the business side of things, but we, from the short-term rental work group, I think there were several hundred properties that were owned by locals, but it wasn't their primary residence. They lived somewhere else. And now that property has got a residence in it that they can't do anything with except rent year round. So I think that, you know, that might have thrown something into the mix, that if this were to come up again, then there'd be more people who would say, okay, this has gone too far. We're going to pass the zoning change this time and then regulate it through general bylaws. But I think that the closed door meeting that they're having on the 11th, which is the zoning board and the select board are meeting in a joint session, and that's already been published, but it will be closed door so nobody can watch it or listen to it. The town may decide that they need to take, they're talking literally about the litigation. I think Giorgio has said many times, and he was quoted in the paper, that the town will appeal. And that will put a stay of execution, if you will, on the rentals that are already in place for this summer. I don't know that they'll call a special town meeting, but I do know that there's a move afoot to get the 200 signatures necessary, along with a citizens article, to force a special town meeting. And if that happens, the town will have to hold it in 60 days from when they get that request. So that's, I think, where it is. We won't know until after the meeting what the town is going to do, but I can't imagine that they wouldn't appeal it. So a couple of questions I have is, if, let's say, they don't appeal it, does this mean it applies to leases that already are in place? Or is it just apply to leases that are in place that, you know, that you can't, so you won't be able to do a new rental after this ruling, but you could do one now? Does it apply to the whole island, not just the ROH? Because if you recall, the Heath decision, which was linked to this, was rendered moot in the R1 district. Does that mean R1 is okay? And then finally, can the town collect taxes on something that's illegal, according to the judge? So those are my questions. And I don't know, I answered questions or if I asked more questions, but that's where we are.
Yeah, I guess not being a Massachusetts lawyer, I can't answer any of your questions. And not being a lawyer in this area makes it difficult at all. But in general, this decision is only binding on the litigants to the decision, one of those litigants being the town, I guess. But not any of the other people or entities that short-term rent are bound by this decision. And so the question really will become, in the short term, whether anybody else will sue somebody else and cite this as a precedent, or whether the town will devote any resources to enforcement within the one zone that is covered by this decision. And those are just practical. It's interesting to me that just by appealing the decision that it automatically stays it, because I think, I don't know municipal law in Massachusetts, but typically you have to ask for a stay. There's an automatic stay of X number of days to give people a chance to appeal. But once the appeal has been filed, typically the district court before, I guess, gets first crack at granting a stay, and then the appellate court. That may be different than a governmental situation. I don't know. So this is it's this great big cloud at this
I
point.
think enforcement it's questionable because they don't have the information to enforce it. When you register your STR, there's no way or no information where you say, oh, I'm renting just rooms versus I'm renting my whole house. So the only way they would know that would be a neighbor.
Yeah, you'd have
ask-
complaints, you'd have a system of complaints, and the town presumably doesn't even have the capacity to do much enforcement without putting
No.
on staff if there are a lot of
Well,
complaints.
that's why they're meeting with the ZBA, because the ZBA would get the complaint first. Right?
So this is, it's just we know where we are, we know where this decision is. It seems to me it gives an incentive for the town through its legislature to do something and do something as soon as they can to clear up this whole thing.
Don has a comment.
Peter.
Look, I think obviously we would have liked the decision to be the other way, but I think the fact that there is a decision is good because it's going to be a motivator. No question about that. Let's see what the town does. I'm quite confident they will appeal it. I think there will be a stay. But I think you may have seen that Peter McCausland, on behalf of Act Now, made an interesting statement, which I think Kathy's right, that they didn't get all that they wanted. They're far from it. But he did say now may be the time to try to see if we can bring the parties together. In the past, they have not been willing to do so. A group that I was involved with tried to get together with them. I think now may be the time. I think there's also, as Kathy said, I agree that there seems to be, a slow but steady drumbeat beginning, for something, because people are tired of this now. And if the town is not going to get the revenue, which clearly they won't if it's held to be illegal and not available across all parts of the island, it's going to have a serious effect on the economics. So it's a good time to, nobody's going to get everything. It's a good time to try to bring some people together. I think that will happen, and I'm hoping that we will have a seat at that table because it's important for our interest, as in the past, to make sure that we're treated equally. And I'm going to try. My plan was to try to make sure that we're part of that.
Yeah. So I actually looked at the question of why there has been this movement toward resolving this in a sensible fashion, with Article 66 and the last town meeting being the last example of that. And I read that yesterday. And it strikes me that Article 66 is just the simplest and purest form of legislation to resolve the problem. And maybe that made it's not complicated. It's easy to understand, or at least easier to understand than it was before, and that may have helped. And so keeping it simple may be important in the future. And you sort of open the door through zoning regulation, and then you adjust how far open or closed the door is through general legislation. And I think that's the step that has been tried and so far hasn't failed, but Article 66 is a really good step in that direction.
Yeah, I think, Peter, though, I think it's easy, I agree, but it's easy to paint Article 66 as sort of free and open, you can do whatever you want. And that, and that's how Act Now paints it, and so I think there needs to be some language included that, which is, it's already there, but emphasizing that, you can't build a hotel and you can't have this kind of commercialization. You think that sane people could come together on this point. Well, I think it's, I mean, we should force McCausland and Act Now on their, I mean, to abide by their word. I mean, he talked about the board of Act Now specifically willing to sit down and talk about it, which they were not willing to do in the past. So I think it's an opportunity we ought to take advantage of.
Just one quick thing I think is interesting too, as I looked at all the numbers. So obviously the vote we know about 66, but the general bylaws that followed, being in the room, you could really feel a shift continuing to happen as people got up to speak and as the indications of what the general bylaw changes that were proposed came out. If you look at the three general bylaws, they were absolutely destroyed, and they were gotten fewer and fewer votes as you went along. So for example, Article 67 was 243 yes, 492 no. Then the two Act Now articles, the one that Patsy Wright had, which was it was a general bylaw, but it was really a zoning bylaw, that was 181 yes and 477 no. And then Matthew Peel's article at the end, which was supposed to be a compromise, got 82 yeses and 490 noes. So it was really interesting to watch that shift. I was very surprised at those numbers. I just thought I'd share it.
Yeah, I guess I having watched it, I might take a slightly different perspective. I mean, clearly the numbers speak for themselves, but I think two things happened. One, DeGiorgio came out specifically against. I mean, he made it very clear that a general bylaw would basically be a waste of time, and that whatever her name was, Patsy, whatever it was, that was probably illegal. That buried it. And by the time they got to the last guy, people were exhausted and and just wanted it over with. But be that as it may.
Okay, so I think everybody's going to stay tuned. And is there a fall special town meeting still on the books or
No.
not?
Not unless the town decides to call one. They've decided already not to call one. They were going to call it for our island home and for the DPW facility, and those things need more work to move forward. So they decided not to. So, but I have heard that somebody will bring forward another Article 66 like thing with 200 signatures, and that will force a town meeting.
Yeah.
In 60 days. That's the other path. But also, we'll get to hear whether the town's going to appeal. We won't know that till after the meeting. So both of those might happen. And the good news, I think, is the judge did not pick a discriminatory ruling. So we're treated like everybody else. Good.
Yeah.
Interesting that it's very narrow, isn't this? I mean, it seemed to me when I just read the headline, it's an extremely narrow decision. It only relates to people in the old historic district, right?
Yes.
And, but it also is so confining. It means that if you have a home in the old historic district, you can't short-term rental without actually living in your house and renting somebody a room. And that's not what the practice has been. I don't know if Kathy, if we know how many units have been registered as short-term rental availability in the old historic district. Do we have any idea?
Most of them are in downtown. Most of them are there. If you look at those heat maps that we did, the short-term rental work group had those heat maps, you remember? Yeah, most of them were there, or then there were a bunch in Sconset and a bunch in Matticat, and that was pretty much.
If that's a substantial amount of the rental, that's why maybe the select board feels they have to have this emergency session, and they'll do the appeal, and they'll find a way to stay this, and then figure out what the next step is. But it's a very narrow decision, and to me, it ignores 100 years of history on the
Sure.
island of Nantucket. So I don't know whether or not they might feel comfortable that they should appeal it, and it'll win eventually because it's contrary to the history and to the practices of the island for 100 years.
And also, what does it mean, the first point there about remanding to the ZBA? Can you,
Sending
someone
it,
explain what
it
that
sends it
means?
back to the ZBA to make a determination.
Yeah.
So what's the ZBA supposed to do with this?
Well,
I
they
don't
got, they have to do something different than what they did before. It's
Well, they have to then come up with their interpretation of
yes.
what the ROH thing means, and
Yes, they got,
Okay.
and I think also, and let's see what happens on the 11th if it leaks out. But I think the Giorgio's position is going to be important here to see, because the town will probably follow his reasoning, or his recommendation, I should say. I fear that it's that they will not view it as narrowly as Gary suggests, and not that they shouldn't, but I fear that they will be very careful here. They don't want to offend the judge who may get this again.
I think Giorgio, he's very forceful in what he said. That was the
Yes.
first time he didn't really waffle.
Yeah,
It was very
yeah.
clear. He's also retiring.
Oh,
So
no.
I don't
Somebody else
know.
will pick it.
I think, yeah, Pucci maybe? I
Yeah,
don't
somebody
know.
else in that firm will pick it up. Okay.
Michael's got his hand up.
Yeah, no, I was just listening to something Peter said, and it struck me that maybe the judge is just trying to send a message to the town to fix this mess up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, that now is the time to get everybody at the table and try and find a solution.
Yeah, I think that's very clear. It's the town created the problem with
Right.
lack of legislation that is clear, and it has to solve the problem. And the judge would rather have the town strangle itself than the court strangle it. It's given them the rope, and they can either hang themselves or not.
Judge is following the Doge policy, just destroy it first and let them rebuild it correctly.
Yeah, but he hasn't fired anybody, and so
He's put
nobody
him
else-
out of business. He's put him out of business.
So we're gonna wait to the June 11th meeting and then figure out
Yeah.
after that. Okay.
So what is the penalty for violating the? Is there a penalty on the books for violating these? Do you have?
Yes.
Is it in, because there's no injunction, there's
There's
no.
no mandamus. There was no mandamus, Peter.
No, but there's going to be, but you want to be subject to a lawsuit. I mean, that's the threat. And, if Act Now puts, they're going to, just keeps filing lawsuits, it's people are not going to do this until they get some clarity, I think.
The sad part about all of this, when I look at it, is the fact that all of this grief to the island of Nantucket is being caused by the money of a non-voting taxpayer,
Sure,
not one of
absolutely.
our group, because we know better,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, no,
somebody who's a non-voting taxpayer has caused all of this dissension and grief on the island of Nantucket. It's a pity.
agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and so Donna,
Okay,
Where
just a few
where are we going?
comments. What? Sorry, go ahead.
where are we going? Where are we going with it?
We don't know yet. I think it's a case of tradition versus change. Chris Perry wrote a lengthy article in the Current, I think it was yesterday. But basically the points for the Town Council Study Committee were a $300 million enterprise. And my comment is, nobody runs a corporation once or twice a year. There's good reason for a town council. But it was not approved, and as Sarah Alger said at the meeting, if this were an official warrant, it would have been voted down. I don't know. I think it's up to Joe Grouse, our chair, and Curtis, who's a proponent of and originator of the warrant, to decide if we should move forward. But the voters have said they don't want to change. So we're up in the air. We're having a meeting on Wednesday, and as soon as I know something, Peter Halley, I'll email you as
Great.
to, what, or if there's any action that we're going to take. I know that the select board gave us money to work with the Collins Institute for this Wednesday's meeting, but I'm not sure where we're going.
Quick, this comment, listening to the things that people got up and said, and they didn't say much. They didn't allow a lot of discussion. That was on purpose. They didn't want it to go down a rat hole. They just kept it really quiet, just the pro and the con, and then everybody sat down and voted. But in all of the hearings that they had, where people were coming up to ask you guys questions, almost everybody had a complete misconception of what it was. And it was all stating something as a fact that was not a fact, and not understanding. I think the big thing is people think, and that's why they get so mad at the select board, that the select board has power to do things. They don't. They are not a legislative body. They can't make things happen. So people get mad at them for a power they don't have because they really don't understand that one piece. And I think that was repeated again and again, just saying.
I think you're right, Kathy. And also, when I listened to almost 95% of the meetings, I attended some of them and Zoomed them when they were during the winter here. It's emotional. It's like one of the folks who attends our meetings on a regular basis, and it's like, we want to meet and greet. We're trying to show a business perspective, a business approach on our $300 million plus budget, and that only a little over 500 people make decisions about in a day or two. They don't understand that in order to make these important decisions, you have to study the plans, you have to review them, you have to discuss them with knowledgeable people who are invested in coming to a proper decision, a result. They want to do it in 2 or 3 days. I'm not sure how you get over the emotional thing, but because that's what it seems to be. And the same people, there was one person in particular who attended 3 of the public meetings that we held. He kept saying the same thing over and over. And what struck me, because I was on Zoom, is that he wasn't interested in understanding what a town council can do for them, or for him in particular. It was like, this is what it is, and this is the way we want to keep it, because it is what it is, because it's tradition. I don't know.
Patty?
I mean, it defies logic.
But Don, I think one of the ways to get around the emotional, because it is very emotional in Nantucket, is for facts. And you close a deal by the benefits, and they're not seeing the benefits. And I don't blame them. And when I mentioned to you, why not go to the next level of meeting the public by using the civic meetings? And I said, Monomoy would certainly have somebody from your committee speak, get down in the trenches with the people and have them understand what the benefits. I myself don't even see a lot of benefit in what it takes to change this government, especially if you have an at-large board again, and not representing the Mid-Island people as much. But I think they don't see the benefits. So forget the emotion and get to the facts.
Well, we have that in our presentation.
How
And
many
it's
people come to
presented.
you? How many people come to you and ask you about all what your presentation is? You need to go to the.
But we are doing that, Patty, and we will come to Monomoy. I told you we would come, but we would do it this year, hopefully in the summer. But we went to, I attended 2 of the civics meetings that we attended. We went to the people, and we're willing to go to more people.
Who did you go to?
Let me see. Pulpus had a group, and there were about 25 people.
Oh,
That was our largest group, and I did attend that because it was in the summer. And then a couple of our members had meetings in the winter at certain places. And then we also had a public meeting at the Athenaeum. We had two others that were Zoomed, and I was able to virtually attend those. So we are going out, and we do want to do more, including Monomoy. And
Well,
we
again-
are explaining the structure, how it works. We're referring them to attend or to virtually watch Barnstable as an example. But there seems to be a roadblock, and it's emotion.
Well, it is emotion because usually emotion wins out when there aren't a lot of facts. And if you say, here's how it's going to work, but here's the benefit for you.
We
This
do
is why
that.
it would benefit.
We
Okay.
do that. So I don't, that's the thing. We do present the benefits of going to a town council, which could meet twice a month, year round, or 9 months out of the year, whatever, more participation. And what some people are saying is that, well, no, I want to cast my vote. I don't want somebody representing me. Well, that's our government anyway, nationally and statewide. So I don't understand. That's why I think it's tradition. It's like, no, we've been doing this for a couple of 100 years. I want to go in and vote, sitting next to my neighbors. But the thing is, they can voice their opinion next to their neighbors twice a month, 12 months out of the year. They
But
can
those
actually
were-
be more involved.
But that's only 5% of your population. What you want to get to are the young families, the 35, 45-year-old young families who aren't going to those meetings. So
Exactly. And we say that. And we say that. So I'm not sure.
Okay,
We'll see
so,
what Joe and Curtis say.
so but as I listen to all this, it seems to me that there are two issues that keep bubbling up. One is that the people in Nantucket, and this probably could be nationwide, don't understand the form of government that they have. And might be very good if people did understand the form of government. In this case, they don't understand what the powers of the select board are, and vis-a-vis, legislation. And the other is that they don't clearly understand what the benefits are of a change of government in a system that they don't understand in the first place. And they are sentimental about what they have and what they know. I'm sitting here asking myself the following question, which is, does the high school have a civics course? And I remember, I was in high school 100 years ago, but we had some rather rigorous, American history and this and that and the other thing, and maybe even understand enough to understand the system of government. I'm wondering whether there might be a high school civics teacher who actually teaches this stuff, who might be an asset to the education of the overall population. Because it's kind of important to understand the facts, as Patty said. Secondly, on the benefits, we have certain benefits that we've identified, but apparently the biggest benefit that the actual voters find is the benefit of community and going to the town meeting. And so one of the questions that I have for you, Donna, is that I know that focus has been on a town council form of government, but there are also intermediate forms between the annual town meeting and the town council form of government. And one of them, I think, is called the representative town meeting and stuff like that. I'm just wondering whether there might be some value, and if I'd heard this suggested a year ago, I would say, no, that this doesn't have any value whatsoever. We should just go for the town council form of government. but some value in looking back a little bit and saying, well, is there something in the middle here that might move the ball forward?
I agree, Peter. Number one, a civics teacher or someone who has that specific knowledge is a possibility to add to the group. And the other is the representative form of government was discussed early on, actually at a number of our meetings. First of all, the warrant said to study town council. But in order to do that, with the guidance of the Collins Institute, we did study all the others, including representative, but decided to move forward with the original request, which was study the town council. I'm thinking maybe 4 or 6 times a year, do something. Maybe that would be a compromise. I don't know. Or 4 times a year. Something more than once a year, that's for sure. So I agree, a little bit at a time might be the way to go. Make small steps to solve some problems, because we have issues, major issues, our island home, the wind farms, short-term rentals. These large issues cannot be decided once a year or even twice a year, which is why we were promoting or are promoting the town council. They have to be addressed, they have to be deliberated, they have to be studied, just like we come together and study issues on a regular basis. Well, certainly our government should be doing that, not just once a year.
So this is like the last is to be continued. There's gonna be a meeting on Wednesday, and we will hear more about whether this is gonna die on the vine or whether there'll be something to push forward on.
Yes.
It seems to me there were also some climate approvals on the wasn't there an approval of money to raise one of the streets downtown or something, or study that further? I don't know what became of that. But guess we've concluded, unless somebody has something else to discuss the discussion of the annual town meeting and the election that went on after that.
Well, there was one comment I'd make, Peter.
Yeah,
There was a proposal to fund the studying of moving the DPW headquarters, and that failed. And my view is that there's a great deal of misconception on the part of the public about what that's all about. As it turns out, the DPW headquarters, which is now off Matticat Road, is a different location than the waste disposal part of the DPW. So people get confused as to which thing we're talking about. It turns out that the DPW that was on the ballot was not the waste disposal group. It was the headquarters, and that headquarters will be gone in 35 years because of the change of the groundwater and flooding. And so they came up with this Shadbush Road location near the airport, which, since they have to rebuild the DPW headquarters today, where they keep the trucks and the equipment, and they're missing a half dozen of the buildings that would be protecting some of this equipment, so we get shorter lives out of it. But all of that needs to be renovated of some sort. And I think the town came to the conclusion that why spend the money on renovating all of this stuff when climate change is going to cause us to move anyway? So they came up with this other location. They worked something out with that the shooting group, right? The Hunters Association, and they had everything done. And then they go to town meeting, and partly because people don't understand it, partly because they were fed up with dealing with the issues of the Old Island home and all the money we're talking about. So that was defeated. And so, I mean, the town has to figure out what to do about that. But at the end of the day, the current facilities are inadequate and will cost us a lot more to keep patching and replacing equipment. And I don't know, the town has to figure out how to do a better sales job of educating people that we're not changing where the waste disposal is. You're still gonna go to the dump and get rid of whatever you need to get rid of. But the headquarters needs to be somewhere else. Eventually, it's gonna be rendered unusable by climate change. And I just don't think the public learned that. So bad job of education.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Gary. Yeah, it's I was surprised that that was turned down, because it seemed to me that that was a reasonable use of funds to assure long-term survival on the island of the critical services and equipment that are required.
Yeah.
And a good use of money. One can quibble about whether things cost more on Nantucket and all the rest of it, but it's hard to quibble that if you when you want the service, you need to have the equipment and the people and the management to provide it. And a lot of people clamoring for services but not willing to pay for them. It's a common problem.
But Peter, the money that was being sought, by the way, was a pretty large amount of money. It reminded me of what they did with the Old Island home.
Yeah,
Years ago, they got permission and they agreed, this is part of the problem why Old Island home cost so much. They agreed that money's no object. So 8 years ago, they agreed to allow to spend $6.8 million, not on building the Old Island home, just on the design of it, right? And the design. Well, and of course, when they knew they had all that money just to design the thing, they didn't, you know, 125 or $140 million, no big deal. The amount of money that they're asking for the design of the new DPW facility is also pretty large. It's, I forget if it was 4 million or 5 million, but it's just pretty big. And so that scared the people. And they said they weren't even sure what it's for, but they voted it down.
Well, I guess we're not going to come up with a solution to this, and some sort of solution obviously has to emerge.
And Lynn's got her hand up.
Yep, Lynn.
And just in defense of the DPW, they did have open houses, and Drew was available at all points to discuss. And if you've never been out there, you should see what little they have when you consider they make every street sign in the entire island is made by hand out there. There are piles for all their street work, whether it's gravel, sand, and all the trucks that just disintegrate from salt air and water is a phenomenal waste of a capital expenditure. So I'm sure Drew is coming up with a new revised plan, but this happened with the fire department as well. We refused to spend any more money to protect the trucks. And when you have all this equipment, you can't just work on them in the summer. So imagine trying to work on engines in February when it's freezing rain or snow, and that equipment just cannot be serviced without having contained spaces.
Is there anything that we should be doing? We have a voice. We probably want to use it sparingly when it's really important to use the voice, and I think we've done that. But I guess until there is some new proposal, there's really not much that we ought to be spending our time thinking about on this.
I agree.
Well,
Yeah.
it'll come up again, so you
Yeah.
know it will come, and the easy street elevation is mandatory. You will not be able to get to the ferry without the town spending that kind of money. And it's a phenomenal amount of money to raise the whole land so that the boat actually meets where the dock is. So that you don't have a choice here. You just have to ask questions about the best way to do it, not if you're going to do it.
Yeah, well, the easy street is that's a different issue. It's another capital expenditure, and that's what I was trying to reach for when I was trying to describe things that were being looked at. That's kind of the Dutch solution of building a dike. And then it also, I guess, depends in the future on the authority, the steamship authority, spending the money to raise the terminal.
They've agreed to do that, Peter.
Yeah.
They have to.
Yeah, they have to.
So these of course were all the things that were looming in the background when we were looking at our island home, and making one question the wisdom of that expenditure at this time. Okay, so it seems that most of the issues, other than the town council issue, they're all financial issues, right? Politics and finance, and they all have an effect on us.
Peter, pardon, but Kathy has her hand up.
Yeah, Kathy.
Just real quickly, I think it's interesting that the seasonal designation bylaw passed unanimously, like it didn't even have any discussion. It was just automatically passed. And that requires the island to have a large percentage of short-term rentals. So I just think it's pretty interesting that passed, and now it's at risk of being taken away.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother issue. It's so damn
I know. I just want to say that vote went. That vote went positive, very, very strongly positive. I was surprised at that. So
the world does not run on logic, but emotion. Okay, so why don't we talk about the future that we can control? There are what, 3 people up for reappointment, and are you
actually
all? Five.
So there's Donna, Gary Beller, who's already submitted his paperwork because he did it a year early. Lou Bassano, Don Green, Jean Briskman.
Okay.
Submitted my paperwork the other day.
You did?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So
All
I guess that Don, I'm just curious as to whether everybody is seeking to be reappointed or not. Just we'd obviously like to have a full slate when the new fiscal year starts, which is when? June 30th?
July 1.
July 1.
Yeah. And sometimes these appointments are not as timely as one would hope for. So getting that paperwork in, and then just let me know, and at some point I can also write a letter if they're not flowing, saying, we need these reappointments done.
Could someone resend the link?
It was I believe it was in the last minutes.
For some reason, yeah.
It's online. It's just a general
Yeah.
application for appointment.
Okay, on the government website?
It's just an app. It's the
fine.
same paperwork that you submitted before. Just change the date and submit it again. I'll see if I have time. I'm really packing to fly out of here this afternoon, but
No, that's okay. I'll find it.
Donna,
Thank you.
it's on Kathy's note for today's.
I
Zoom.
know, for some reason, it's not on my laptop or iPhone.
okay. Well,
Why, I don't
somebody can
know.
reset it. That would be good. So, and the only one who's not on today, Lou, is not on the call, but so we don't know if he's submitting.
Okay, so let me just then move on to the PR committee, and I can almost make the report for the PR committee, and that is as I look at who is online, there's nobody from the public online. And this is one where, you know, because we didn't have a speaker, the decision was made to not reach out to the Yankee and the current with publication. And so I think you see the difference. And because had there been some PR, which we decided not to do, there probably would have been more people looking at this today. So that to me says the PR committee has been doing good work and ought to continue. Do you have a report?
No, I certainly will continue, but as we discussed, there was no speaker, and generally what draws people to these meetings is a speaker, and many of them drop off after the speaker anyway, when we get to our business. But I am happy to continue doing what I've done over the past year or so about sending news to the papers, which are or the online media, which are happy to run it.
Good, thank you.
The other thing I have to do, Peter, this is on me as well as encouraging people to get reappointed, is I have to draft the annual letter to the town manager. So I'll be drafting that. I think it's due in August or something, and sending it to you for approval.
Great,
Okay.
great.
And also, Peter, if we have, I assume that next on your list is to set meeting dates for the summer, because that helps let people who are interested put it on their calendar, even if they
And
don't.
we have to reserve the trailer, so it's very important we set our dates so I can put that request in for whenever we start hybrid again. I don't know when that'll be.
So the why don't we set those dates, because you're absolutely right. That is the next thing on my calendar here on the agenda. And I would like to do set the meeting dates and also create a new list of people we want to invite for the various dates. And as I said, we have the sewer stormwater guy at least is now tuned in to the fact that we're around, and we're going to invite him at another time. And we typically have, Libby once, and earlier is better than later, and because she has a sort of state of the town type of address that she does that's really quite good. And in the past, we've had the police chief and the fire chief and a whole bunch of people, somebody from the Steamship Authority. We can just run through this list again, or focus on anybody new and different that we ought to try to get to speak to us.
Peter, do you remember the gentleman from Washington, D.C.? And Kathy, you may, everybody probably remembers him. He was instrumental in helping us gather support for a letter that we were writing, and it was published and so forth. Pardon?
The speed limit letter?
No,
No, the
it was the
other.
wind letter.
The whale?
Yes.
Yeah, he was the lobbyist down in Washington.
Yes, exactly. I wonder if he would be a good speaker. What do you
His
think?
name is Keith in Syracuse.
Why would he be a speaker?
Would he be a good speaker for us?
On what issue?
Keith who?
His name,
What's
last name is Syracuse. I've got it in my notes.
And I have it in my notes too, but I wonder if he would be a good speaker.
On what issue? On what issue?
I don't know. Let's find his name. I have to go through my notes. But
have
he
his
was
name.
very interesting, and we were all very enthused about his participation. So I wonder, I could just pull up his name later on, and I'll email.
Well,
Peter.
Syracuse.
It's
that was his
Syracuse.
last
It's
name, yeah.
Keith Syracuse.
Yes. What do you think?
And he's a Mattakit summer
He
resident?
just sold his
Yes.
home. He just sold his home, yeah, but he is a resident. He just sold his home. You know, he's a great guy. Actually, we did more for him than he, you know, he he was looking for support, which we gave him. Uh, I just am curious. I mean, he had an issue that he was looking for support for on this on the whale issue, and we came up and we helped with a letter. I just don't know. He's a great fellow. Maybe, I mean, to me, he'd be more helpful to be on the committee. I'm not just don't know what his to speak on. I just don't. I mean, I'm missing something here. I don't see what his
Well,
topic.
I guess if we'd have him speak, we'd probably have him speak on the art and science of lobbying local governments.
Yeah, well,
How
think
to
he's a
write a
valuable
big check,
resource,
is that what you're saying?
Pardon?
Yeah, exactly. Wait, by the way, thinking about writing checks, I guess there's going to not, we are going to also have to elect our officers and all the rest of that at the next meeting. And there are no, we can't have any, what do you call them? No political advertisements allowed, and so on and so forth.
I
Yeah,
don't think you have to worry. I don't think you have to worry about that.
Um, okay, so I will continue to try to get the sewer person, Libby, for probably the next meeting, our meeting in July. So should we meet?
Whoops, you froze. We lost him.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
We lost him. When have we met? I'm trying to remember. Have we met every 3 weeks in the past in the summer? Is it every 3 weeks?
Yeah,
So-
it used to be every 2 weeks, then
Yeah, I think
last
3
year was
weeks.
every 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think 3 weeks would work. And if you know 3 weeks from today, and then work it itself out, I think it's like the 28th. You know, and then last weekend in June, and works it right through.
Peter will have to run the meeting.
Yeah.
I won't be back yet.
Well, that's a meeting before the end, which is also good. It's before the end of the fiscal year, so it's not, you know.
So the question is, when do we start? When do we want to start the hybrid? Do you want to start that? When will we
Yeah.
have a quorum on the island?
I'll be here on the
We're gonna
28th.
start in July with the hybrid meetings. That's next month.
I guess I'm just curious.
28th.
I think most people be on the island on the 28th.
Yeah.
Who will not be on the island on the 28th?
Me?
Okay, one. Who else?
I'm not on the island.
Two. Who else is not on the island?
Scott will not
Scott
on the
and
island.
Donna.
Three, four. So 3 or 4.
I've got a wedding in Napa.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying it's enough for a hybrid. I mean, I would start the hybrids as soon as. I mean, I don't know why we wouldn't start the hybrids whenever our next meeting is.
Kathy,
Well, that
when
meeting,
are you
if it's
back?
hybrid, if it's hybrid, you need to have Peter Halley run that meeting in the
Oh.
trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. All right,
Yeah.
so he needs to be here. Okay. What happened?
When are you back, Kathy?
I actually am, I'm only gonna be back for a few days at the beginning of July. I don't really come back to the island until the 23rd. So someone else is gonna have to, I can participate in the meetings, but I can't run them from remote if they're hybrid. So it has to be someone in the trailer. And Peter's done it before, but he'll have to get a refresher, as we all do, as they change things.
But I think it's important that we try to meet in person as much as we can.
Okay, Peter's trying to get back in. I'll let him in. What do you think?
Yeah. Vote him off the island.
Vote him off the
Vote him
island.
off.
All right, there he is. We're talking about you, Peter.
An equipment malfunction, fortunately not a costume malfunction.
Okay.
That's the first time that's ever happened. I had my computer plugged in. Apparently it was not actually plugged in and it ran out of juice. So I'm now back in juice. So I apologize for that. So where we were is just scheduling the next meeting and going over speakers and
Yeah, while you were gone there, Peter, we were talking about whether whether every 3 weeks as we had last year makes sense.
Okay.
Every third week. And if you did that starting today, you'd pick up starting with June 28 and working your way through from there.
Yeah, June 28th is impossible for me.
All right, well, if you're not gonna, okay, well, and Kathy's not gonna be around either, so I mean, that's gonna be a problem. So,
Yeah.
when are you gonna
We
be
could
back?
we could do a Zoom meeting though, that date.
Well, I don't, Peter said he's got, are you
I'm going to
unavailable?
be on an airplane coming from Berlin to the United States on that day, and getting back to the United States, I guess, in late afternoon, mid to late afternoon.
I'll be in Ireland.
So maybe we can do it the following. Well, that's sort of July 4th weekend.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not a good weekend to do.
Yeah. Should we do it the weekend after July 4th?
Yes, so.
That's the 12th.
July 12th.
So that means this is our last meeting this fiscal year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
July 12th.
And
then,
that would be a hybrid, right? And so, and Peter, you'll have to run that one. I won't be on the island on the 12th.
oh God, that's I'm gonna have to get anxiety medications.
Yes, I know. I'm sure they've messed it up again for us, but you'll have to get some remediation. We both will.
Yeah. Okay, so July 12th, I'm just looking at July 12th, and then
August 2nd.
August 2nd. I know I think I can do August 2nd. I know I have
I'll be there August 2nd too.
Okay. August 23rd.
Yep.
Okay.
That'll be it. Then you got Labor Day. And the question is,
so Labor Day weekend, I'm going to be at a wedding.
no, but it's not. It's
The 6th is.
No, I'm just saying that you're already after Labor Day weekend.
23rd would be then the 12th, 13th.
Yeah.
13th of
Beyond.
September.
Sorry.
Is that 13th of September?
Yeah. I
Okay.
think you're beyond. Yeah.
Okay. So why don't we leave it at that for the time being? Does that make sense?
Do we want to ask Libby for the 12th?
I think so.
You should.
Yeah.
Do you want to try to add the 26th also
26th of what?
of July?
I thought we had. I thought we had
We
the
have the
second.
12th?
We had the 2nd of August. The 12th of July, the 2nd of August. And then
23rd of August.
23rd of August,
Okay, the
and
second.
then the 12th of September, or 11th of September, really.
13th of September, isn't it?
What's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, 13th, yeah, 13th, I'm sorry, yeah, 13th.
Yeah. And then, if something comes up, it seems to me that the thing that's most likely to come up is an STR special meeting, right?
Yeah, I mean, the only, yeah.
We can
Yeah.
always call a Zoom,
Right.
if we need to.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big issue is gonna be, is there anything happening between now and the 12th of July? And that's a big spot, where.
That's like a 5-week
Yeah, it's a
spread.
big spread here. It's a big spread. But since, if we can't do it on the 28th, I don't know when else we do it, so. Unless you do it on the 21st, but I'm not sure.
Since we're hearing some subjects being discussed this coming Wednesday with the select board, maybe we should do the 21st. What does everybody think?
Well, I will be in France on the 21st.
So will I. Let's get together. Let's have it over
Ah.
there.
I'll be-
Everybody join
And
us.
then Zoom us in.
I'll be in Saint-Tropez, and I can make a reservation for everybody for lunch.
Sounds good.
You won't like the bill.
Maybe I'm not gonna, the dollar is worth about 10% less in comparison to the euro as it was this time last year.
Yeah.
And then I'm afraid that they will charge me duty on whatever extra poundage I bring into the country.
Mhm. All right, why don't we just leave it as we suggest, and then if we have a need for a meeting, we'll just call them, and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'll go for Libby for July 12th. I'll ask Dave. Dave is the sewer, whatever guy.
David Gray.
David Gray.
We haven't had we haven't had the doctor on the board, the selectman. I mean, he's, and we traditionally try to we try to have a select person.
That's a good point, because we've never had him.
Right.
And so I can ask him for August 2nd. And then it's been a while since maybe we should focus a little bit more on the select people if we can do that.
What about Matt Fee?
Matt Fee, that's what I was thinking, because he's just been reelected.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We never had Tom Dixon either.
Yeah,
Well, we did
Dixon.
have Tom Dixon.
We had Tom.
Yeah,
Did we have
had
Tom
Tom.
too?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
But just remember, the select board takes I think it's a 2-week hiatus in their meetings, so everyone goes on vacation.
Yeah, but Matt Fee's going to be around, given he's got to run the sandwich shop, so he'll be
Hey,
definitely.
He went away when we needed him in August one year.
Did he? Oh, I'm surprised.
So
Okay.
you have to really play around. He'll say he's really too busy to.
Yeah, that may be.
time.
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, do we, is it time to have I think the police chief is.
We just had her.
We just had her.
We had the fire chief the year before.
The DPW, I mean, do we say we're going to have the DPW? We usually,
DPW.
we've always had the DPW guy sort of on a regular basis.
Yeah, so maybe we go for DPW guy. This
Did,
is.
did we have Brooke Moore?
Yeah, we've had her.
We've had Brooke Moore and,
Was
I think-
before I was on, okay.
yeah,
So it's Drew Patnoid, who's the DPW director.
Yeah. Well, didn't we invite him and he was getting married or something? I thought that was,
he's brand new, I think.
yeah, he's the guy, we did
Right.
invite him. I thought we invited him for like April, or May. And then he was getting married and he begged off, but I thought we sent him an invitation to him. So, I mean, he would be good, you ought to follow up with that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I've got 4 people to look at, and four dates at this point, and let's see if we can, instead of waiting, I'm gonna ask all 4 for those dates and.
Yeah.
Best, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
okay, good. Thanks a lot.
All right. We're going to end on time. Early.
Yay.
Good.
Right, I can go finish packing. See you
Have a
in
good trip.
France.
Have a good
Have a
trip.
good trip.
Have a good trip.
Safe
Yeah.
trip.
Thanks.
All right.
Want to call, we have to vote to adjourn. I move to
So
adjourn the
moved.
meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Nobody opposed? Okay, let's go.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Hi, everybody.